Okay, so here's section four, which is I've called an American story. And what's American specifically about the story is that it's a Western. And many war films take on this sort of collation or conflation of genre, where Westerns themselves in the post World War world, because in the 40s and the 50s, the Western is the go to action picture for men, for people generally, and into the 60s, where we just don't have Westerns now the way that they made Westerns, it was a standard. We have action movies now. So the Fast and the Furious would have been a Western in the 50s. And so there's in the mind of a boomer like Oliver Stone, who grew up watching Westerns, as people of his generation did grow up watching Westerns, it was very common for these young men in Vietnam to map what they saw around them, not only onto war films about the Pacific, let's say famous war films like The Sands of Iwo Jima and so on, and Pork Chop Hill, and very famous films, although that's ironically about Korea. But it was also famous, sort of made sense for them to map this onto a Western, where the Vietnamese become the Indians. And I use the word Indians here because they were not Native Americans, they were Indians, who were to be hunted down and killed. And so if there are a couple of sort of key Westerns you might look at if you're interested in this relationship. You might look at a book by, I'm trying to remember her name. I can't remember. It's called West of Everything. Jane Tompkins is the author. It's a nice little book about Westerns. If you want to see sort of the classic Western, you would see like High Noon and The Searchers. Any John Ford Western will do. And any film with John Wayne in it will do. But the idea is that the world divides into those inside, basically the fort, and those outside of it. Inside the fort, it's all white and safe, and there are your friendly Indians who help guide you, and they're good and nice and reliable and so on. And then outside, there are the bloodthirsty Indians that want to kill all white people, and those are the people you gotta kill. So basically, inside the fortress, it's American, and outside the fortress, it's Indian country. And the men in Vietnam will talk about Indian country, basically being outside the gates of their fire bases where they're posted. So this concept of mapping a war film onto a Western is the kind of thing that Stone does deliberately. And so he shows here, I've shown you this little clip here where we see basically Chris along the watchtower. Now this relates to the popular song All Along the Watchtower, which is a very important song politically, because Stone is trying to get in everything he can. He's going to go on to make 2-3 more movies about Vietnam. Born on the 4th of July, Heaven and Earth, it's based on When Heaven and Earth Change Places, and there's one more. I can't remember it. But he's got a lot to do still in Vietnam. Born on the 4th of July is probably the next most important text for us in terms of the Vietnam texts from Stone. And so then I showed you did I show it to you, or are you going to see it? Where are we? You're going to see it. Okay, have a look at these next clips and keep this Western stuff in mind.
Kiểm soát lên mấy cậu Đa Liên.
Day by day, I struggle to maintain not only my strength, but my sanity. It's all a blur. I have no energy to write. I don't know what's right and what's wrong anymore. The morale of the men is low. A civil war in the platoon. Half the men with Elias, half with Barnes. There's a lot of suspicion and hate. I can't believe we're fighting each other when we should be fighting them.
Okay, so you've just seen some clips, and so you'll now get the silhouette of Chris standing with his rifle and having a smoke. It's very much a Western. It's like this could be on the parapet, or basically the upper part of a fortress. Then we have the faceless Vietnamese who are speaking in untranslated Vietnamese. They're pointing on the maps. They're moving very quickly. They're being issued. This again follows the sort of the general way that the Vietnamese fought, which was that they issued weapons, or they issued bullets and ammunition as the soldiers were leaving the compound or were leaving the area, so that they weren't walking around with loaded rifles. That's the theory anyway. And they leave this marker in the tree indicating, which way basically the squad is going. All of which is done in this very, and remember, we saw this in Top Gun, the faceless Vietnamese. We don't actually see their faces. They're not actually real people. They speak this incomprehensible language. It's very fast. It's very brutal, apparently, and they're leaving signs like they know the jungle the way the Indians know the jungle of the jungles of New England and the jungles of the Midwest and so on. Well, before you get to the Midwest, where it's open. So that's the narrative, that this is a very American story. Basically, it's understandable if you picture it in terms of them Indians, us white men, and this helps to frame the narrative as being colonialist and racist. And this wasn't a particular problem for people watching at the time. They were like, yeah, okay, they're the enemy. I mean, again, the feeling about the Asian person is that in America it didn't really matter whether you were from Japan or China or Korea or Vietnamese. You're probably killing them. The only Asians you weren't killing were the South Koreans, but you were going to fight for them, right? I mean, what's that about? Couldn't they do their own fighting? But no, Americans had to go and fight the Korean War and prop up South Korea, okay, and fight the Chinese and fight the North Koreans. So this then leads on to the Civil War in the platoon, which Chris talks about, and this is made much of. And again, it helps to fracture things into the good and the bad, where there's the underdog, Chris, and his troops, or his friends, who are people of color, you'll notice, and in general. And Barnes and his group, who are in general racist and white. Drinkers, racist, white, and Chris is tolerant, has African-American friends, and they smoke weed. Okay, so he's like, that's this is this and that is that. And this Civil War is also, of course, a very familiar story, because basically these are the people who believe in freedom and tolerance, the people who have African-American friends, and the people who believe in segregation, a civil war. So at this point, we have fully left behind the world of Vietnam, and we have fully entered the world of mythos. And so people will say, sometimes people watch Platoon and they're like, so was it really like that? I mean, people were fighting in platoons. It's like, whoa, no. In the front line? No. Was there racial trouble? Oh yeah. In the front lines, not so much. In a frontline company like that, nah. There's too dangerous. No, people wanted to survive. So, okay.